Everybody. Today I'm going to read the next chapter called Bad Guys. Remember, Ruby really wanted Ivan to paint a picture of her. So he started to paint a picture of her, and he had another idea. And he put all the paintings that he did under the pool. And we don't know what his idea is. Most of the day I doze. Doze is another word for sleep. Late in the afternoon, Mac approaches. Bob slips under Not Tag. Not Tag is his stuffed animal. He prefers to keep a low profile under Mac. Mac's gaze falls on my pool. A corner of one of my paintings is visible. "What's that, big guy?" he asks. I calmly eat an orange, ignoring him. But my heart is racing. Mac kicks at my plastic pool. Underneath it are all of my paintings. Mac yanks on a piece of paper. It slips out easily, and he doesn't seem to notice the other paintings. The page is striped with green, which is what happens when blue paint and yellow paint mix together. It's supposed to be a patch of grass. Not bad. Where'd you get the paint anyway, George's kid? He considers. I'll bet I can get $30 for this picture, maybe 40. Mac turns on my TV. It's a Western. There's a human with a big hat and a small gun. He has a shiny star pinned to his chest. That means he's the sheriff and he'll be getting rid of all the bad guys. If this sells quick, I'm getting you some more of that paint, buddy, Mac says. He walks away with my painting, Ruby's painting. For a moment, I imagine what it would feel like to be the sheriff. "Good news, huh?" Bob says when Mac's out of earshot. "Looks like you might be getting some more supplies." "I don't want to paint for Mac," I said. "I'm painting for Ruby." "You can do both," Bob said. "You're an artist after all." While I watch the movie, I try to come up with a new hiding place for my paintings. Maybe, I think, I could fold them once they're dry and stuff them into Not Tag. It's a long movie. At the end, the sheriff marries the woman who owns the saloon, which is a watering hole for humans, but not horses. It's been a long time since I've seen a Western that was also a romance. "I liked that movie," I said to Bob. "Too many horses, not enough dogs," he complains. An ad comes on. I don't understand the ads. They're not like Westerns, where you know who the bad guy's supposed to be. And they're hardly ever romantic, unless the man and the woman are brushing their teeth. I watch an ad for underarm deodorant. "How do you know who's who if they don't have a smell?" I asked Bob. "Humans reek," Bob said. "They just didn't notice it because they have incompetent noses." So do you think he means they have good noses or not so good noses? Another ad comes on. I see children and their parents buying tickets, just like the tickets Mac sells. They laugh. They enjoy their ice cream cones as they walk down a path. They pause to watch two sleepy-eyed cats, huge, striped, dozing in long grasses. Tigers, I know, because I saw them on a nature show once. Words flash on the screen, accompanied by a drawing of a red giraffe. The giraffe vanishes, and I see a human family staring at another kind of family, elephants, old and young. They're surrounded by rocks and trees and grass and room to wander. It's a wild cage, a zoo. I see where it begins and where it ends. The wall that says you are this and we are that, and that is how it will always be. It's not a perfect place. Even in just a few fleeting seconds on my TV screen, I can see that. A perfect place for animals would not need walls. But it's the place I need. I gaze at the elephants, and then I look over at Ruby, small and alone. Before the add-ons, I try to remember every last detail. Rocks, trees, tails, trunks. It's the picture I need to paint. It's different now when I paint. I'm not painting what I see in front of me, a banana, an apple. I'm painting what I see in my head, things that don't exist, at least not yet. I pull out Not Tag stuffing. Carefully, I fill her with my paintings, hiding them so Mac won't sell them. She's large, bigger than Bob, but I still have to crumple a few of them up. Bob tries to settle on her for a nap. "You've killed her," he complains. "I had to," I said. "I miss your stomach," Bob admits. "It's so spacious." When Julia arrives, she notices that I've used up my paints and paper. "Wow, you're one serious artist, Ivan," she says. My finger painting has sold for $40 with a frame. Mac is happy. He brings me a huge pile of paper and a big bucket of paint. Get to work, he says. I paint for Mac during the day and for Ruby at night, and I nap when I can. But my nighttime picture isn't quite right. It's big, that's for sure. When I place all the pieces on the floor of my cage side by side, the cement is almost completely covered. But something is still missing. Bob says I'm crazy. There's Ruby, he says, pointing with his nose. There's the zoo. There are other elephants. What's wrong with it? It needs one more thing, I say. Bob groans. You're being a temperamental artist. What could be missing? I stare at the huge expanse of colors and shapes. I don't know how to explain to Bob that it isn't done yet. I'll just have to wait, I said. Something will come to me, and then I'll know my painting is finally ready. During the last show of the day, Ruby seems tired. When she stumbles, Mac reaches for the claw stick. I tense, waiting for her to strike back. Ruby doesn't even flinch. She just keeps plodding along, and after a while, Snickers jumps onto her back. I lie in my cage, with Bob on my stomach. We are watching Julia do her homework. She doesn't seem to be enjoying it. I can tell because she's sighing more than usual. Like that. Again, for the 100th time or maybe the 1,000th, I wonder what's missing from my painting. And for the 100th time or maybe the 1,000th, I don't have any answers. Dad, can I ask you a question, Julia says. May I, George corrects. Ask away. Julia glances down at a piece of paper. What's the difference between the word principal with A-L and principal with L-E? The first one is the head of the school, says Miss Garcia. The second one is a belief that you know, like what's right or wrong. For example, it's against my principles to do my daughter's homework for her. Julia groans. If I'm going to be an artist when I grow up, why do I need to know how to spell? With a laugh, George heads off. Poor Julia, I think. Gorillas get by just fine without learning how to spell. All those endless letters, those sticks and circles and zigzags, filling up books and magazines, billboards and candy wrappers. Words. Humans love their words. I leap up. Bob goes flying straight into my pool. A word. You know how I feel about wet feet, Bob yells. He scrambles out of the water, shaking each foot in dismay. I look out my window at the billboard. I can still hear Mac's voice in my head. Come to the Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade, home of the one and only Ivan, mighty Silverback. I count to 12, and then I count again just to be sure. I lay out 16 pieces of poster board, 4 down, 4 across. A perfect square. What are you up to? Bob demands. I'm guessing it doesn't involve sleep. It has to do with the billboard. That sign's a monstrosity, particularly since I'm not featured. I grab my bucket of red paint. You're not on the billboard because you're not in the show, I point out. Technically, I don't even live here, said Bob. I'm homeless by choice. I know, I'm just saying. I study the billboard, then I make 2 fat lines, like broom handles. Another fat line connects them. I stand back. What do you think? What do you think he's trying to do? What is he writing? What is it? No, wait, let me guess. It's a ladder. Not a ladder, I say. A letter. At least I think that's what they're called. I have to make 3 more. Bob cuddles up next to Not Tag. Why? He says, yawning. Because then I'll have a word. A very important word. I dip my fingers into the paint. What word? Asks Bob. H-O-M-E. Bob closes his eyes. That's not so important, he says quietly. All day long, I knuckle walk circles around my cage. I'm so nervous I can't nap and I can't even eat. Well, not much anyway. I'm ready to show Julia what I've made. It has to be Julia. She's an artist. She'll surely truly look at my painting. She won't notice the smudges and the tears. She won't care if the pieces don't quite fit right together. She'll see past all that. Surely Julia will see what I've imagined. I watch Ruby trudge sullenly through the 4 o'clock show, and I wonder, what will happen if I fail? What if I can't make Julia understand? But of course I know the answer. Nothing. Nothing will happen. Ruby will remain the main attraction at Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade, conveniently located off I-95, with shows at 2, 4, and 7, 365 days a year, year after year after year. It's time to show my work. The mall is silent except for Thelma, the macaw, who is practicing a new phrase. Uh-oh. Julia is finishing her homework. George is sweeping outside. Mac has gone home for the night. I grab Knot Tag and carefully pull out all the folded papers. So many paintings, page after page, piece after piece of my giant puzzle. I pound on my glass and Julia glances over. Fingers trembling, I hold up one of my paintings. It's brown and green. It's a corner piece. Julia smiles. I display another picture, then another, and another, each one a tiny part of the whole. Julia looks confused. What is it? She asks. It doesn't matter. It's pretty just as it is. Uh-oh, says Thelma. Uh-oh, the bird says. Uh-oh. No, I think, no, it does matter. George calls to Julia. Ready? He's done for the night. Grab your backpack and hurry, it's late. Gotta go, Ivan, she says. Julia doesn't understand. I have to find the right pieces. I dig through the pile. They're here somewhere. I know they are. I find one, then another. I try to hold 4 of them up against the glass. Bob, help me, hurry, I said. Bob grabs paintings with his teeth and drags them to me. One by one, I shove pictures through the window crack, crumpled and all torn. There are too many pieces. My puzzle is too big. Careful, Ivan, Julia says. Those might be worth millions someday. You never know. She arranges the paintings into a neat stack. I suppose Mac's going to want to sell these in the gift shop. Still, she doesn't understand. I shove one more out of the hole and more, all of them one after another. So Ivan's been painting, has he? George says as he puts on his coat. A lot, said Julia, a whole lot. You're not taking all those home with you, are you? Said George. I mean, no offense, Ivan, but they're just blobs. Julia thumbs through the towering stack of paintings. They might not be blobs to Ivan. Let's leave those by the office, George suggests. Mac will want to try to sell them. Although why anyone would pay $40 for a finger painting a 2-year-old could do, I don't know. I like Ivan's work, Julia says. He puts his feelings into it. He puts his hair into it, said George. Julia waves goodbye. Night, Ivan. Night, Bob. I press my nose against the glass and watch her walk away. All my work, all my painting wasted. I look at Ruby, sleeping soundly, and suddenly I know she'll never leave the Big Top Mall. She'll be here forever, just like Stella. I can't let Ruby be another one and only. Often when visitors come to see me, they beat their hands against their puny chests pretending to be me. They pound away, soundless as the wet wings of a new butterfly. The chest beating of a mad gorilla is not something you ever want to hear, not even if you're wearing earplugs. Not even if you're 3 miles away wearing earplugs. A real chest beating sends the whole jungle running as if the sky has broken open, as if men with guns are near. Thump. The sound, my sound, echoes through the wall. George and Julia spin around. Julia drops her backpack. George drops his keys. The pile of pictures go flying. Thump, thump, thump. I bounce off the walls. I screech and bellow. I beat and beat and beat my chest. Bob hides under Knot Tag, his paws over his ears. I'm angry at last. I have someone to protect. After a long while, I grow quiet. I sit. It's hard work being angry. Julia looks at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. I'm panting. I'm a little out of shape. What the heck was that? George demands. Something's really wrong. I've never seen Ivan act that way, said Julia. He seems to be calming down. Thank goodness, said George. Julia shakes her head. He's still upset, Dad. Look at his eyes. My pictures are scattered all over the floor, like huge autumn leaves. What a mess, said George, sighing. Wish I hadn't bothered sweeping tonight. Do you think Ivan's okay, said Julia. Probably just a temper tantrum, said George. Can't say I blame the guy stuck in a tiny cage like that all these years. Julia starts to answer, But then she freezes. She looks sideways. She stares at her feet, where my pictures lie in disarray. Dad, she says, come see this. I'm sure he's another Rembrandt, said George. Let's pick these up and get going, Julia. I'm exhausted. Dad, seriously, look at this, said Julia. George follows her gaze. I see blobs, many, many blobs, along with the occasional swirl. Please, can we go home now? Dad, that's an H. Julia kneels down, straightening one picture, then another. There's an H. And here, put this one here. And I don't know, maybe that one. You have an E. George rubs his eyes. I hold my breath. Julia is running now. She picks up one picture and then another. Dad, it's a puzzle. This is something. It's a word. Maybe words in a picture of something, a giant picture. Jules, this is crazy, George says. But he's looking at the floor now, too, wandering from picture to picture and scratching his head. H, said Julia. E. Here's an O. It looks like an I. H-E-O-I. George writes in the air with his finger. I-E-O-H. Not the letter, an actual I. And that's a foot. Or maybe a tree and a trunk. Dad, I think that's a trunk. Julia runs to the window. Ivan, what did you make? I stare back. I cross my arms. This is taking much longer than I thought. Humans. Sometimes they make chimps look smart. Julia and George take the pictures to the ring where there's room to see them all. An hour passes as they try to assemble my puzzle. Ruby's awake now, and she and Bob and I are watching. Ivan, is that a picture of me? Said Ruby. Yes, I said proudly. Where am I supposed to be? That's a zoo, Ruby. See the walls and the grass and the people looking at you? Ruby squints. Who are all those other elephants? You haven't met them, I said, yet. It's a very nice zoo, Ruby says with an approving nod. Bob nudges me with his cold nose. It is indeed. In the ring, Julia pumps her fist into the air. Yes, yes, I told you, Dad. There it is. H-O-M-E, home. George gazes at the letters and spins around to look at me. Maybe it's just a coincidence, Jules. You know, a once-in-a-million kind of thing. Like that old saying about the chimp and the typewriter. Give him long enough and he'll write a novel. I made a grumbling noise as if a chimp could ever write a letter or a novel. Then how do you explain the rest of it? The picture of Ruby in the zoo. How do you know it's a zoo? George said. See the circle on the gate? There's a red giraffe in it. George squints and tilts his head. Are you sure that's a giraffe? I was thinking more along the lines of a cat. It's the logo for the zoo, Dad. It's on all their signs. Explain that. George gives her a smile. I can't begin to. I'm just saying there has to be a logical explanation. Look how big this is, said Julia. Ruby's right ear into the Julia puts the last piece of Ruby's right ear into place. It's huge. It is definitely large, George said. Julia watches me. She chews on her thumbnail, and I see the question in her eyes. She turns back to the paintings and stares at them, truly looking. A smile slowly dawns on Julia's face. Dad, I have an idea, a big idea. Julia races around the edge of my painting, her eyes spread wide. Billboard big. I'm not following you. I think this is meant to be on a billboard. I think that's what Ivan wants. George crosses his arms over his chest. What Ivan wants? And you know this how? Because I'm an artist, and he's an artist. Uh-huh, says George. Julia clasps her hands together. Come on, Dad, I'm begging you. George shakes his head. I'm not doing that. No billboard, no way. I'll get the ladder, said Julia. You get the glue. I know it's dark out, but the billboard is lit. Mac will fire me, Jules. But think of the publicity, Dad. Everyone would know about Ruby, said Julia. You want me to put up a sign that shows Ruby in a zoo with the word home on giant letters? George said, a sign that just happens to be made by a gorilla? Exactly, said Julia. And you want me to do it without Mac's permission? Exactly, said Julia. No, said George. No way. Julia goes to the edge of the ring, careful not to step on any of my paintings. She picks up Mac's claw stick and walks back and hands it to her father. George runs a finger along the blade. She's just a baby, Dad. Don't you want to help her? But how would it help, Jules? Even if lots of people see Ivan's sign, it doesn't mean anything's going to change. I'm not exactly sure yet, said Julia. Maybe people will see the sign and they'll know this isn't where Ruby belongs. Maybe they'll want to help too. George sighs. He looks at Ruby and she waves her trunk. It's a matter of principle, Dad. Principle with an L-E at the end. Dad, what if Ruby ends up like Stella? George looks at me, at Ruby, at Julia. He drops the claw stick. Get the ladder, he says. It's in the storage locker. Wow, boys and girls, what a turn of events. What do you think's going to happen when Max sees the sign? Do you think he's going to get mad? Do you think he's going to think Ivan really knew what he was doing? And what does this mean for Ruby now after the sign gets publicity, like Julia says? That means when a lot of people see it. Write an ending to this story if you can think of what may really happen. All right, I'll see you next time.